Man and Superman is a four-act drama written by George Bernard Shaw in 1903. The series was written in response to calls for Shaw to write a play based on the Don Juan theme. Man and Superman opened at the Royal Court Theatre in London on May 23, 1905, but omitted the third act. A part of the act, Don Juan in Hell, was performed when the drama was staged on June 4, 1907 at the Royal Court. The play was not performed in its entirety until 1915, when the Travelling Repertory Company played it at the Lyceum Theatre, Edinburgh. Summary: Mr. Whitefield has recently died, and his will indicates that his daughter Anne should be left in the care of two men, Roebuck Ramsden and Jack Tanner. Ramsden, a venerable old man, distrusts John Tanner, an eloquent youth with revolutionary ideas, saying he is prodigiously fluent of speech, restless, excitable, possibly a little mad. In spite of what Ramsden says, Anne accepts Tanner as her guardian, though Tanner doesn't want the position at all. She also challenges Tanner's revolutionary beliefs with her own ideas. Despite Tanner's professed dedication to anarchy, he is unable to disarm Anne's charm, and she ultimately persuades him to marry her, choosing him over her more persistent suitor, a young man named Octavius Robinson. List of characters: Hector Malone, S.R., an elderly gentleman who has worked hard throughout his life to retain a high social status in which he now takes pride. Anne Whitefield, a young woman, graceful, somewhat enigmatic. She corresponds to the character Do plus or minus Anna in the Don Juan myth. Henry Straker, chauffeur with a Cockney accent. John Tanner, also called Jack Tanner, a well-educated, well-spoken man who takes everything seriously, including himself. A political firebrand and confirmed bachelor. Allegedly the descendant of Don Juan, as well as the modern representation of the Don Juan character. The very name John Tanner is obviously an anglicization of the Spanish name Juan Tenorio, which is the full name of Don Juan. Violet Robinson, sister of Octavius Robinson. She has been secretly married to Hector Malone, Jr. Mrs. Whitefield, mother of Anne, and widow of the late Mr. Whitefield. Susan Ramsden, the spinster sister of Roebuck Ramsden. Hector Malone, Jr., an American gentleman who is secretly married to Violet Robinson. Octavius Robinson, an amiable young man who is in love with Anne Whitefield. Brother to Violet Robinson. He represents Don Ottavio from the Don Juan myth. Roebuck Ramsden, an aging civil reformer who was friend to the late Mr. Whitefield. He corresponds to the statue in the Don Juan myth, who is in turn the representation of the spirit of Don Gonzalo, the father of Do plus or minus Anna. Mendoza, an anarchist who collaborates with Tanner. Mendoza is the president of the League of the Sierra, a self-described brigand and a Jew. He corresponds to Shaw's conception of the devil as he would be portrayed in the Don Juan myth. Interpretation and performances. Don Juan in Hell the long third act of the play, which shows Don Juan himself having a conversation with several characters in hell, is often cut. Charles A. Berst observes of Act 3. Paradoxically, the act is both extraneous and central to the drama which surrounds it. It can be dispensed with, and usually is, on grounds that it is just too long to include in an already full-length play. More significantly, it is in some aspects a digression, operates in a different mode from the rest of the material, delays the immediate well-made storyline, and much of its subject matter is already implicit in the rest of the play. The play performs well without it. Don Juan in Hell consists of a philosophical debate between Don Juan and the devil, with Do plus or minus Anna and the statue of Don Gonzalo, Anna's father, looking on. This third act is often performed separately as a play in its own right, most famously during the 1950s in a concert version, featuring Charles Boyer as Don Juan, Charles Lawton as the devil, Cedric Hardwicke as the commander and Agnes Muirhead as Do plus or minus Anna. This version was also released as a spoken-word album on LP, but is yet to appear on CD. In 1974 Euro 75, Kurt Kassar, Minna Loy, Edward Mulhare and Ricardo Montalban toured nationwide in John Houseman's reprise of the production, playing 158 cities in 6 months. Ideas Although Man and Superman can be performed as a light comedy of manners, Shaw intended the drama to be something much deeper, as suggested by the title, which comes from Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical ideas about the Übermensch. The plot centers on John Tanner, author of The Revolutionist's Handbook and Pocket Companion, which is published with a play as a 58-page appendix. Both in the play and in the handbook, Shaw takes Nietzsche's theme that mankind is evolving, through natural selection, towards Superman, and develops the argument to suggest that the prime mover in selection is the woman. Anne Whitefield makes persistent efforts to entice Tanner to marry her, yet he remains a bachelor. Anne is referred to as the life force, and represents Shaw's view that in every culture, it is the women who force the men to marry them rather than the men who take the initiative. Sally Peters Vogt proposes, thematically, the fluid Don Juan myth becomes a favorable milieu for creative evolution, and that the legend becomes in Man and Superman the vehicle through which Shaw communicates his cosmic philosophy. Productions Indiana, 1977-78. The RSC produced Man and Superman at London's Savoy Theatre. In 1982, a television version with Peter O'Toole in the starring role was first broadcast in the United Kingdom. In 1996, to celebrate BBC Radio 3's 50th anniversary, Sir Peter Hall directed an audio production with Ralph Fiennes as Jack Tanner, Judi Dench as Mrs. Whitefield, John Wood as Mendoza, Juliet Stevenson as Anne Whitefield, Nicholas LaProvost as Octavius Robinson and Jack Davenport as Hector Malone. In 2015, London's National Theatre staged a production, with the Hell sequence included, directed by Simon Godwin and starring Ralph Fiennes as Jack Tanner. References. External links: Man and Superman, an audio rendition of the play. Man and Superman, digitized copy of the first edition from Internet Archive. Man and Superman at the Internet Broadway Database, review, photos and other information, read online at Project Gutenberg, The Revolutionists' Handbook and Pocket Companion, an appendix to Man and Superman, Old Time Radio. MP3 downloads of 1950 performance.